Wendigos, half-human, half-beast creatures from Native American legends, living in forests and mountains. Are they demons? Or are they people plagued by a curse after committing cannibalism? These creatures allegedly crave human flesh and have the odor of decaying corpses. So let's grab a blanket, turn off your lights, and hope the Wendigos don't come and get you tonight. Wendigo. When I was in my first year of college, I lived with my mom by ourselves. My dad had passed the year before, and we moved out of the house shortly after. I was glad because I had suffered a lot of paranormal trauma growing up there, and was glad to get out. One night, I was driving home on Highway 11 North after youth group, and I saw something that still bewilders me. It was lightly raining that night. Mist crawled across the road from the cow fields on either side. The lights from the few gas stations nearby were reflected in the wet asphalt. I was driving about 3 car lengths behind a dark minivan with nobody else in sight on the roads. All of a sudden, I saw the van swerve to miss something in the middle of the road. I was going too fast and the road was too slick to miss it. All of a sudden, I saw framed in my headlights and silhouetted in the glowing red brake lights of the van speeding away, a tall, muscular man with the upper shoulders and head of a buck. It was like a minotaur, but a deer head instead of a bull, and glowing red eyes. I clinched and braced for impact, and then passed right through the figure. It was like it dissolved right into the mist. I am used to swerving to miss a deer at night, but I should have nailed this thing on the driver's side. Nothing. I was too afraid to look in the rearview mirror as I gassed it and sped home. I was only a couple of miles away, which was both comforting and terrifying at the same time. I raced in the door and locked it behind me. I told my mom, who laughed it off, but was disconcerted at my pale, clammy complexion. I only later found in research a being described like what I saw. A Wendigo. A Native American legend that was terrifying to me as a child, but I had never heard it described like this. I had never heard of any creature like this until that night on a dark Highway 11 that I will never forget. Demon encounter? A few days ago, I was walking around the land near my home. It's a big field with 2 large hills and plateaus on the both of them. It was around dusk, so the sun had just set, but the moon wasn't out yet. Upon walking in the valley of sorts, between the 2 hills, I saw something peculiar. A white, featureless human-like head, 200 feet away. It was about 4 feet off the ground, and was pacing back and forth from what I could tell. It sounded like a horse when it walked, and when I went to pull out my flashlight, it growled at me. I immediately went home, deciding I didn't want anything to do with it that night. Today, a friend came over, so we decided to investigate again during daylight hours. We couldn't really find anything conclusive, but we did find some creepy things. We heard howling and laughter like that of a child. I thought it sounded like the Skull Kid, to be honest. Birds just weren't flying right, and something kept watching us from the trees. Again, we heard the sound of hooves. My friend said she smelled sulfur, but I couldn't smell anything, although the inside of my nose was burning. We took a couple pictures. In the photographs, the first 3 are graves. When we looked, we didn't know what they were. And there was a last one, a final grave as well. Well, I really don't know, but these graves and rocks were all over the place, and some looked like they had been burned. If you guys could help me out, that would be great. Edit. Upon doing a little looking, it seems like it might have been a Wendigo or skinwalker. Creepy memories from my childhood. This is not a singular story, but a collection of incidents that occurred in my parents' house during my childhood. I present them like this because each is too short and fleeting to be worth posting individually. So here we go. I grew up in an older home with a creepy backstory. It had belonged to a high school gym teacher who was exposed as a pedophile after making overtures towards male students. He was dismissed from his position, though no criminal charges were brought against him, and later, if I recall correctly, committed suicide. While he never appeared himself to me, I did experience a plethora of disturbing phenomena. The house was cloaked in an unnaturally thick atmosphere, accompanied with persistent feelings of being watched, followed, and having one's thoughts read. Consequently, I would often peer over my shoulder, expecting to see something, and run up and down the stairs. I don't know why, but this quality was felt the most intensely in two locations: the back of the basement, especially in the tool room and workshop area, and the upstairs, especially my bedroom. Oddly, the first floor always felt fairly normal. The first visual phenomenon to emerge, in addition to the general feeling of weirdness, was what I now recognize as shadow people. These included the running figures seen in my peripheral vision, as well as an assortment of figures resembling the heads on Easter Island, and one tall looming figure I think was female. Years later, my mother would admit to having witnessed these same appearances, but hers were gray and congregated on the stair steps. The phenomenon was most intense in my bedroom, where at night I saw a number of bizarre scenes. The first time I woke in the dead of night to spot an emaciated, gray-skinned figure with exposed bone tissue and viscera sitting on the rocking chair in the middle of my bedroom, wearing tattered remnants of my father's clothing. The next I saw a slideshow-like sequence of images of a Grim Reaper figure and the Egyptian deity Anubis sipping tea together on a boat as it passed through the Nile River. The most intense experience was a guttural mocking laughter issuing forth from the far corner of my ceiling, which grew and echoed for several seconds until abruptly quieting. These episodes, which kept me in a state of near constant fear and anxiety, declined in frequency until eventually ceasing altogether as I entered puberty. I would have one single after-the-fact experience when I was 14, in my bedroom, in which I heard very briefly a faint, tortured voice quietly call my name, as if it needed my attention. In recent years, my father has admitted to feeling a sensation of darkness and dread in the basement workroom, where he kept his home maintenance equipment at the time. He also asserted that one evening as a small child, I saw something in the driveway through an upstairs window and was deeply frightened by it. I have no recollection of this, and he never saw the thing himself. To ask bluntly, what do you think was going on in my childhood home? I never want to go outside again. Not sure if the story belongs here or not, but I hope you can be entertained by my horrifying experience. Sorry it's so long. A few months ago, the summer after senior year, me and a few friends decided that we were going to go backpacking. We researched a little bit and found a good trail 10 miles in and 10 miles out of Hot Springs, by the end of the trail where we were going to sleep. The trail in question is in Big Sur, California. I think it's called Pine Ridge Trail to Sykes Hot Springs. It's in the Ventnor Wilderness Reserve. We packed and headed out there. Myself, my best friend Aaron, girl that Aaron is crushing on named Sarah, and Sarah's friend Sam. It's like a 4-hour drive to get out there. We started hiking at around 11 in the morning, and it felt a hell of a lot longer than 10 miles in. Practically no one else was hiking in either. Everyone was hiking out. We got to the campsite, and we were the only ones there by like 5:30 at night. The forecast was clear, so no one had brought tents. We were all fairly experienced backpackers, so we packed light. I set up my hammock, and everyone else was sharing a tarp on the ground. We basically decided around 8 that we were wiped and wanted to sleep, so we all get ready for bed when it starts pouring rain. Fuck. I take my hammock and lay down under the tarp with everyone else. Of course, I was last under the tarp, so I was right next to the fucking bag of trash. This is where shit got creepy. We all fall asleep. Around 1 a.m., Sam wakes up and is freaking the fuck out. She says something was fucking playing with her hair. We all tell her to calm down, it's just a squirrel or some shit. We all fall asleep again. This time, both Sam and I woke up to something sitting on top of us on the tarp. Not something light either, like, easily like 150 pounds. We were both panicking quietly. Eventually, whatever the fuck was on top of us gets up and walks away. We woke Aaron and Sarah, and they think we're just fucking with them, of course. By this time, both Sam and I aren't going to fall asleep again, so we were just waiting for morning. Probably around 4 a.m., I hear a rustling next to me. Then a fucking hand reaches under the tarp and takes the bag of trash right next to my head. Fuck. Sam and I wake everyone else and start freaking out again. We just all stayed awake under the tarp until morning. It stopped raining at like 6:30, and we got out from under the tarp. We were still the only ones in the campsite. We were looking for the bag of trash after we packed up because we didn't want to leave a bag of trash in the woods because we love nature and all. We couldn't find it anywhere. Aaron found something else. He found fucking fresh handprints on the ground in the mud, leading to the tarp. The handprints couldn't have been more than 2 hours old, because the rain would have washed them away. Aaron and Sarah now believe Sam and I. We were either being hunted by a fucking circus performer, or some paranormal shit was going on. We decided that we were done, and noped the hell out of there that early day. We hiked that 10 miles out in like 2.5 hours. We still really don't talk about it much. Aaron still backpacks though, because he's fucking insane. Okay, due to the popularity of the first post, I decided to give you more stories on scary things that's happened to me during my time in the outdoors. A bit of background from what was missing from the first post. I am a lifelong outdoorsman type of person. I'm an Eagle Scout, and have worked at multiple summer camps as well as hiked and backpacked close to 700 miles. I've spent my fair share of time outdoors, and some stuff that I've kind of repressed is now coming back to me. One of the times where I'm fairly sure I've come across at least signs of a skinwalker or a Wendigo was 2 years ago. I was backpacking near a reservoir in the Sierra Nevadas called Girl Creek. It is on a national forest land, so you are allowed to camp anywhere there. We had hiked probably a good 15 miles or so away from anything resembling civilization. It took us 2 days to get out there because there were no trails or anything, just forest. That's when we found what I could best describe as a hut made out of bar strips, sort of like a teepee. Now we were in the middle of fucking nowhere, like there was no way in hell that anyone had been there out for a long time. We were a bit perplexed, so we walked closer to investigate. And then the smell hit. It smelled like how it tastes when you bite your tongue really bad, essentially very metallic and bloody. As soon as we smelled that, we just decided to stay the fuck away from that teepee thing because it smelled strongly of blood. So we hiked the way back we came, like 3 miles before setting up camp. The next day, we got the hell out of there because I'm not stupid. I've seen a horror movie or two. Another time, the summer of junior year, I spent 4 weeks working at a Boy Scout summer camp called Camp Lassen, up in the Lassen Volcano Park by Chico. To put in perspective where this camp was, it was probably an hour from the nearest paved road. While I was working there, I was in charge of the mountain bike area, meaning that I spent a fair amount of time clearing old mountain bike trails a long distance from the camp itself. I probably had to ride 45 plus miles per week just clearing these trails. In order to do this, I would get together work crews of other staff members and go out to clear trails. The particular experience that scared the living shit out of me, and is actually why I didn't go back and work there the next summer, happened in the second to last week of camp. We were trying to clear out a new trail so that it would be ready for the next year. It was myself, the mountain bike director, who was a partially activities director named Matt, and a CIT named Cody. Now we were a good 6 or so miles from the camp when this happened. Matt was up front, clearing bush with a pair of garden lopers. Cody was in the middle digging a path through the ground with a shovel, and I was in the back helping finish the trail. We had been building a trail for maybe half an hour totally engrossed in our work. I left to go get a drink of water from my bottle, which I had left by the bikes. I took a 5-minute break before walking back to help Matt and Cody. I got back within line of my sight, and there was a fucking third person with them working the shovel at the back like I had. I had to do my best not to book it out of there. I called Matt's name, and he came over to me completely oblivious to the fact that I was going to have a nervous breakdown. I distinctly remember looking him in the eye and telling him to count how many of us were there. It took him all of 3 seconds to look at Cody and then shout, "Fuck." Cody, Matt, and I booked it to the bikes. We never finished that trail. We got back and told the camp director. He told us not to breathe a word of this to anyone. There is still a big red X on the mountain bike trail map, labeled "Stay the fuck away from here." I have a few more stories if you guys are interested, so let me know if you'd like me to continue the series, or if you have any questions. Wendigo Ghost. I'm hoping Wendigo falls under Ghost. If not, well, fuck your definitions. 2008, Northern Ohio. My cousins invite me out to go camping, to some hidden state park or whatever, and I happily agree because hey, Ohio has to be better than Indiana, right? So I drive out there to their house, and we pack up our tents and food and head out in his truck for a few hours into the boondocks. After miles of twists and turns, the road gets bumpy, and I wake up and we were off the grid like dirt road and grass off the grid. We park the truck and head up into the hills for a couple of miles and make base camp at the top of a hill, overlooking a valley of thick trees on the edge across from us. Nightfall comes fast, and around 1 or so, around the fire I ask the park's name, and they break into laughter and say it's not a park but native land, and we were camping upon Sacred Hill. I call bullshit, but they name a tribe which at the time sounded legit enough. A couple minutes later, we heard this scream howl that just drifts across the hill and right to our bones. We all grew up hunting and have been around the country long enough to have heard our fair share of animal calls, and we agreed that this sounded like nothing we've ever heard before. If anything, I would have to say a screaming fox, but deeper. This goes on a few more times, and our laughter soon becomes uneasy as it seems to be getting closer. The fifth scream sounded like it was coming down in the valley, so we look over in the direction, and I don't care if you believe this shit or not, but I do to my death. Out of the fucking tree line, we see what looks like a gangly, thin, naked man, who from this far away seems way too tall for normal. This thing takes off in a sprint on 2 legs at us, and without hesitation, all 3 of us run off the hill and into the woods towards the car. Being night, it only made this escape more terrifying. As we reach the bottom of the hill, we hear the scream again, this time from where our camp was. None of us turn back nor check to see if the others are near us. After the fastest 2 miles in my life, we get in the truck and floor it off the land and to the nearest McDonald's, where we all sat until dawn with no words to each other. We agreed to go back in the morning to grab our things. We do, and to our surprise, nothing had moved or was taken, which seemed weird because if someone was fucking with us, they would have trashed the place or at least took something. We drove back to my uncle's, where we tried to joke about it and just move on. This shit didn't bother me until I saw my friend play Until Dawn, and I became uneasy and how much it looked like what we saw. The shit's real and out there.